Italy is banning the sale of babies to gay couples. So why isn't Pope Francis cheering? Joining us, our Rome correspondent, Dr. Jules Gomez. Jules, what's going on there in Italy?
Brad, ironically, the tiny minority of evangelical Christian leaders are cheering and standing right behind our Prime Minister Giorgia Meloni, because Meloni is upsetting some very big people in Europe because she's taken a stand on homosexuals adopting children and homosexuals basically shelling out cash for other women to carry babies for them.
Well, that all sounds fine. You would think Pope Francis, who can take time out for glad-handing with Biden, would actually be supporting Meloni. What's his take on it?
There are a number of reasons, and we'll get into that, why Francis doesn't like Meloni and her party, Fratelli d'Italia, Brothers of Italy. But primarily, Francis is sending out mixed messages on surrogacy.
Okay, so exactly what is Italy's position right now on same-sex marriage?
Okay, Italy, under the center-left government of Matteo Renzi, legalized same-sex unions in 2016. However, couples who civilly unite do not have the right to adopt children. Couples were going abroad, adopting children or, getting children through surrogacy and bringing them back to Italy. But Italian law since 2004 clearly prohibits this. And I will read this to you. According to law number 40, Article 12, paragraph 6, anyone who in any form carries out, organizes or advertises the marketing of gametes or embryos or surrogacy of motherhood is punished with imprisonment from 3 months to 2 years and a fine from 600,000 to 1 million euros. So Italian law is very strict on no surrogacy. Now, what Meloni's government did last month is introduce a bill that will make surrogacy a universal crime. So it is prohibited in Italy, but Italians will no longer be able to go abroad and get treatment for surrogacy.
Okay, so we have something that's far beyond just the question of homosexual couples, same-sex marriage. We have something far beyond even just the question of adopting a child into a homosexual couple. We actually have the marketing of babies, specifically now homosexual couples, because they can't have babies. They are the ones who are actually seeking to buy them, basically. So we're having the sale of babies to homosexual couples. That's what Meloni is really trying to shut down here, isn't it?
Oh, absolutely. And her government, Meloni herself, has come out very strongly against this, this trade we've seen with all that is good. When the war started in Ukraine, we saw how many thousands of babies were just abandoned, thrown on the streets, because Ukraine has been the center of Europe for, basically the baby business. And Meloni has talked very clearly about the fact that how children need a mother and a father, and such trade is absolutely outrageous, tantamount to slavery.
Now, Jules, you're saying a baby needs a mother and a father. Meloni's saying that. That sounds very familiar with phrases coming from Pope Francis, doesn't it?
Well, absolutely. He has said that in the past. And a couple of years ago, when he was addressing an audience, he called surrogacy an inhuman way of dealing with things. But he almost blessed, that may be too strong a word, the union of a so-called Catholic couple living in Rome, an Italian couple, Andrea Ribera and Dario De Gregorio, and they were featured in a film that became very popular in a film festival. This couple, gay couple, have had 3 children through a lesbian surrogate, and they wrote to Pope Francis to say, if it was okay. They were Catholics as Boy Scouts. They wanted to go back to their parish church, bring up their children in the parish. And Francis phoned them 2 days after receiving the letter, and he said, yes, of course, you must go. You have my blessings, etc., etc. But he did not say a single word against the inhumanity of surrogacy or the fact that these two were living together as, as basically husband and wife.
Well, we get the mixed signals on contraception. It may be bad, but, everybody's welcome at the communion rail. We have divorced and remarried couples. Of course, the whole Amoris Laetitia debacle rolling out since 2015. The fact that, okay, well, marriage and divorce may be bad and remarriage is wrong, but everybody can come to Holy Communion. It's just mixed signals continually. Jules, you mentioned the Ukraine there. Italy, is it standing against surrogacy here, selling babies to homosexual couples?
Brad, thank God, Viktor Orban, a strong evangelical Christian who's married to a Catholic, has taken a stance on this, and Hungary passed a law, banning the dissemination of LGBT propaganda to children. Now, the European Union is furious and is trying to stamp on Hungary, doing everything. In fact, they're taking Hungary to court, and I think 13 or 15 European countries have joined together to take Hungary to court. But the good news is Meloni is standing with Hungary, and she has refused to jump on the bandwagon. And of course, Hungary is supporting Italy, and both Meloni and Hungary have been very close ideologically, but also strongly against the homosexual agenda and in support of the traditional family.
Yeah, God bless Viktor Orban as well. I have a sidebar for the viewers here. I actually named my second son Victor in his honor. I've been reporting on him for years. I'm very impressed with the man. What are faithful Catholics, Jules, in Italy doing about all this? How are they responding?
There are good pro-life organizations like Pro Vita and Familia, and they have issued petitions to garner support for the government's bill. They say we want to ban procreative tourism. This is what they call it. But again, they have received very little support from Pope Francis, the Italian bishops, or the Pontifical Academy for Life. No surprise there.
Okay, you mentioned briefly that Francis, he has a very complicated take on all this. I mean, he doesn't support the populist political figures, and of course his mirrored back and forth on any type of pastoral approach he has to anything. Can you help our viewers get dialed in on the mind of Francis?
Well, sadly, he seems to have an antipathy to nationalists like Giorgia Meloni or Viktor Orban, who love their country, who recognize that countries like Hungary and Italy have an ancient Christian heritage, who want to preserve that heritage, who recognize that unbridled immigration, particularly from the Islamic world, is eroding the heritage and culture of these countries, and so are putting up, barriers against unbridled immigration. But Pope Francis, being a kind of open borders guy, thinks that, they are pulling up the bridges, they're pulling up the drawbridge, as he said a few years ago. And so if it were Joe Biden, of course, he would be happily, welcoming them. But in the case of Orban and Meloni, even though relations are polite, they are not very good.
Speaking of borders, Jules, is there still that wall up around the Vatican, I presume?
Oh, the last time I looked, it was still there, Brad.
Okay, well, let us know if he ever gets around to taking that border.
Built incidentally to keep Muslim invaders out of this country when they were nearly taking over the country centuries ago.
You would think the open border policy would militate against continuing to have that wall up, but let's move on from. I really feel for Orban and especially for Meloni. When they don't get that support from the church they need, what do you think is going through Meloni's head? What's her personal views in her heart?
Meloni's an interesting figure because she's never come across as a practicing Catholic. But she's said openly that she's a Christian, she's a mother. Very recently, she got rid of what the previous left-wing government had introduced, the possibility of parent 1 and parent 2 on birth certificates, and she put back mother and father. She's also spoken out against the LGBT agenda. In fact, she ran on that, that was part of her manifesto. And I am deeply disappointed living in this country because one will think that the Holy Father should draw her closer into the church, particularly if she doesn't come across as a practicing Catholic, but does hold to very strong Christian principles and should join her. And Meloni is very clever. She's allied herself with the small, tiny minority of evangelical Christians in this country, and they are encouraging her, and she's encouraging them to get into government. So if she can do it with this small group of Christians, why can't she have that sort of relationship? Or why can't the bishops and the Pope have that kind of relationship with somebody who so strongly holds to traditional Christian values? Absolutely.
Well, Jules, this is a multifaceted problem, but with deep significance, and unfortunately the children are the ones that are going to bear the brunt of it. Thanks for dialing us in today.
Thank you, Brad.